just for starters, what do you feel like your mindset, your team's mindset is going into this tournament, being, and their expectations?
We just talked about it, so I can give you a really good answer. It's different for us. We've been going to the SEC tournament, needing something to happen down there to be in the conversation for the postseason NCAA tournament. We feel very comfortably into the tournament, but now we start talking about what a couple of wins or 3 wins or 4, all that means on seeding and how significant that can affect you. So it's a different approach, but certainly we still know there's importance down there. I don't know that the scoreboard is as important as always. How we play, how we handle whatever circumstances are thrown at us, and staying healthy, making sure we are very, very good in the hotels. We did a little refresher course on how to check into hotels and how a key card works and how elevators work, because we haven't been in a hotel in a long time. I do think there's a sense of there's some looseness today in practice. I think we've had to walk a razor-thin edge the last month of the season, really 2 months. I don't know, probably since SEC season started. We knew, and I give our kids a lot of credit for self-awareness, things that were going to happen. It was almost predictable. We had a really tough road schedule to start. We had a middle part that was a balance. And then we had a chance at the end of that 5 games. If we had stayed in a good frame of mind, we had a chance to go 5-0, and they did it. But to do that, you're constantly walking a razor-thin edge of focus and preparedness and putting too much pressure on them. So I think there's a sense of renewal, and it appears that way in our first hour of practice today.
Jason, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, specifically on Ole Miss, that was maybe the most chippy, physical game that I saw in person. Just the thoughts on playing them first game and what you remember from that game and what it could be in the tournament.
Probably would have been if you got your choice of who you'd like to draw on, that's not the one. I think they're playing really well. I think they are starting to peak at the right time, obviously with their performance. I thought they played well against us, and I think they've played well in all those games since. We're so close. We've recruited so many kids against each other. A lot of these kids have played against each other. There was a lot of competitiveness going on, and it did get chippy. There's no question about it. So I'm sure there will be some carryover. How you manage and handle those is always important. Talking about it is the first step, but going out and doing it is the second. But I do think that that makes for a good atmosphere. It makes for a cool thing. Level heads always do tend to prevail, but I think that excitement is what tournaments are about. So we'll embrace it, but we'll certainly talk about how to manage it and make sure that we are poised if those things arise.
Porter, go ahead.
Coach, leading into this SEC tournament, do you think there's more or less pressure knowing that you've pretty much got a seed locked in the NCAA tournament?
Well, there's less pressure as to making the tournament. I think our kids want to get the highest seed they can, so they also want the opportunity to continue to play. Y'all know that's been this group's focus from day one, is play as many games as possible. So I don't think there's as much, that. We know we're not turning our uniforms in if we lose one down there, and that always alleviates a little bit of that. But I still think there's a great desire for them to go down there and win 4 games and bring home a trophy. But like I said previously, how we play and how we act and how we travel and how healthy we are when we come back is the utmost importance.
Jenny, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Jenny Carlson with the Oklahoman here. Hey, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Chelsea. Obviously, the honor she got today sort of, puts into, hardware what you guys have seen out of her all year. But when you think about her trajectory since she got there to Fayetteville, what are you most pleased about with the way she's evolved over these years?
That she has evolved, that she's grown from being somebody with a boulder on her shoulder to just being a little bit of a chip, a little of a chip. She still got it. She'll carry it like she always does with her. But she's become a great teammate, Jenny, and she's become an ambassador out in the community. She's got a mini fan club, where you get to see kids wearing her jersey to school and taking pictures and sending her things in the mail. And I told her she really made it a couple of weeks ago because she started getting letters from inmates. When you start doing that, just, randomly, that's always been a sign of you've hit the big time when those start coming in. So we had a good chuckle about that. But she's just the evolution that you talk about. She's gone from being somebody that we counted on to, do a lot of our scoring to now defend the other team's, second best perimeter defender, get us some rebounds, carry the load off the court with marketing and branding. And she's done it with a lot of poise, a lot of class, and it's not easy. It's really, really hard, and really pleased with that. On the court growth, she's really started to strip away. That's why I think you see her percentages have gone up this year. She's eliminated a couple of hard shots every game or a couple of, charges. I want her to have two charges a game. People always on the commentary that's something she's got to stop doing. And I'm glad she doesn't listen to them. That's what makes her special. She's got that ability to be able to drive, be able to pull up, be able to make the defense wrong. But you can't do that if you don't have the driver's mentality. But what she's done off the court, probably the most proud. Secondly, on the court, that she's really become coachable, not only just from her coaches, but listening and talking to her teammates. And I know a lot of that's had to do with her getting older and realizing that to play in the WNBA, there's things that you have to do that don't have anything to do with how much you can put the ball in the basket. And that she's stayed here with us all the way through when all these other kids, jumping around and doing things in grad years and things like that. She's become a Razorback. And you could tell by the senior night reception how much our fan base and our teammates and our coaches appreciate her.
Nate, go ahead.
Well, Chelsea put 38 on Ole Miss last time they played. What do you expect them to do with her this time?
Well, I know there'll be some changes. I think the thing we've got to get into focus. Slocum didn't play last time we played Ole Miss, so that was I called. I went back and looked at my play call. I called Chelsea's number of plays more in that game than any game all year long because Slocum was out. They did a lot of switching last time on screens, which when people start to switch screens, we can then determine who's guarding who. If you're going to switch screens, then we can look out there and say, okay, well, maybe that's not your best on-ball defender, and we'll get you in that switch. So I suspect we'll see some different ball screen coverages than we did the last time. I don't think we'd see much zone after we shot it so well against Alabama, but we might. But I do think we'll see some different on-ball screen coverages and maybe some initial matchup differences, with Slocum being available and back in the lineup.
Also, the fact that against the league champion, he came down to two fluky last-second shots. Do you feel this is your best chance to win the tournament that you've had since you've been here?
I don't know, because the draw is incredibly hard. I think we've got the hottest team in the league in Ole Miss first, and then you got Tennessee, who I think beat us worse than anybody in the league, handled us with their size. They give us tremendous problems at the perimeter. Then you'd see a South Carolina before probably, I think would they have to play a game before? Yeah, if South Carolina advanced. It's just a really hard path, Nate. I think it's our hardest path. I do think it's our best team. But sometimes your best team doesn't always mean that you're going to finish the best because of the draw. So I think there's a convergence of those two things. But I do think we're healthy. I think we're happy right now, and we are playing pretty good. So we'll see how it works out, but it is an incredibly tough draw.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jacob, go ahead.
Mike, nothing against Howard, obviously such a great player, but were you a bit surprised that Chelsea didn't win Player of the Year? And do you think she might use that as a just another chip on her shoulder come Thursday?
I think she will. She's always gone down there with some type of a chip. That one year she said because she didn't make first team. So if it puts her hair on fire, that's fine. I don't think we'll have to do any of that. Ryan Howard, I said last week, somebody asked me, I think on here, about player of the year. The way that we do our voting in our league, I knew it was going to be incredibly hard for her to be player of the year. Absolutely. There's so many deserve. And this year, more than ever, we had a lot of nominees. A lot of years it's just an either or. But this year, that list was pretty long. So, and then when, our ballots are not public, they're just coaches putting them in. So you never know how that goes. But I don't think it's a slight. I hope she doesn't take it as that. But if it puts a chip on her shoulder, that's okay. Today's National Sportsmanship Day, so I'm going to be very I'll have some facts out tomorrow that would help my case for pleading for my player and defending my player. Those will come out later, but not on National Sportsmanship Day. But Ryan Howard, Joni, obviously a great coach and a great friend of mine. I'm really happy for her. All the players that won their individual awards. I will tell you this, it was the most incredibly tough picking of the 16 that I've ever had to do. Picking 16 players to nominate, or 8 and 8. And then it was the other side of that. I had a hard time finding 8 freshmen. Our league is dominated by upperclassmen, so there were a few obvious freshmen. And then after that, it was I had to do some digging to see who was involved there. We had a lot of good scholar athletes too. Did Sierra Johnson win that one? Yeah, hard. I mean, any of those, I would love any of those nominees to run a company if I was a business person. A lot of scholar athletes in our league. So, I hate it for Coach Blair. I think in a year when I voted for Coach Blair because I always pick the coach that wins the league. I voted for Don last year and the year before that. So whoever wins the league gets my vote every single year. I know ballots aren't public, but I'll tell you that. But happy for Joni, sad for Coach a little bit. And then if it motivates Chelsea and Amber, to some degree, Amber had certainly, I think, an all-conference type year. And I always defend Mac. I just don't think people dig into the numbers deep enough to look at what she does against the other team's best players defensively. I think Mac is deserving of being recognized eventually. Maybe that'll happen in her upper class years, but I certainly think she had an all defensive team effort for the SEC season.
Jordan, go ahead.
Coach, my first boss told me the same thing about when you get letters from inmates. That's when you made it. So
that's good. That's good, Jordan. Yeah, that's one of those thresholds you cross. So
we'll take it.
Yeah.
Hey, your 2 all SEC ladies are ones who didn't start their career at the U of A. So can you touch a little bit on their impact here and what they've done and meant for Arkansas and just what you've been able to do with transfers?
Well, it was out of necessity. If we would have inherited a team that was full, the locker room was full, we wouldn't have needed that. I made the decision as an assistant coach way back when that whenever I got to be a head coach, I would not be one of those coaches who came in and just completely cleaned the locker room out. If those kids had chosen to come to the campus, then they were going to get to stay. It was going to be their decision. But we only had 5 kids in the locker room when we got here. So the transfers had to be a part of our blueprint initially. Back then, and even I guess still to this day, it's not immediate eligibility. So we knew it had to be a little bit of a process. Attracting Chelsea was a huge key because she had name recognition in this part of the country. She'd played with USA Basketball. She'd been a dominant force on the AAU circuit with the San Antonio Finest and Coach Caldwell. She was connected. We were very fortunate that she's a dreamer. She listened to what the dream could be, not what it had been and what it was at the current time when she came here. She really helped us design what kids do in their redshirt year, the way that we did our game after the games. She played 34 games in her redshirt year. They were just on Fridays with no crowd and no ticket sales. I told people all the time, come watch these games. They're entertaining. We had Itiana Golden in that group too, and sometimes those games were very competitive. But she helped us build the model, then helped attract Amber the next year because they had been, teammates. And then, Slocum is a situation that, it's one of those things that I tell young coaches, if a recruit tells you no initially, man, don't be a jerk about it. Just understand that the kid had to make a tough decision, and they just didn't choose you because she told me no 3 times. And each time I tried to be more and more supportive, and it came around that last time when she was looking for a place to finish her career, it was here. So completely different paths, completely different journeys for them, but their impact is obvious. Somebody wrote it the other day or said it the other day in the media, but Jalen Mason, the first year she was here, we were picked 14th in the league, and now we're like 13th in the country. I just think that's such a good bow to wrap up for this class, that of where it was when they got here and how they've made it all work. Because we can have all the plans, we can do all the mail outs, we can talk about blueprint all we want up there in the coach's office, and man, none of it works if the players don't initially come and then work hard and work together. There's been a lot of role adjustments within our teams over the last 3 or 4 years. Chelsea and Slocum and Amber and Jalen and Taylor, Macy and Grace having to go through all of that. So I hope those guys look back on it when they're a little bit older and realize how cool of an experience it was for them.
Seth, go ahead.
Mike, you said earlier in the year that you want your team playing the best, right about this time, tournament time. What's the key to that?
I think what you do in the off season, I think attention to every single day, a plan for every single day in August, September, October, November, how you practice, how long you practice, when you practice, what drills you do in practice, how you recover, how you give them their day off. It's just such a puzzle. And I don't know that we have it solved, but I think we're getting close to playing our best basketball again when we have our previous 7 years. But I just think it's a lot of attention to detail along the way, sticking to it through the highs and the lows. Not, if you play bad, not all of a sudden, we got to have a 4-hour practice. I think you've got to be really, really consistent with that. And the kids have to want to keep coming to practice. They're excited out there. They may have had more fun today at practice than we've had since like week 1. And if it's not that way, if they don't want to come to practice, if they get happy when you give them a day off, that's always a sign for me. I always like, hey, we're going to stop a little. They're like, no, coach, we need to practice. That's a great sign. So I think it's just a lot of people. It's our strength and conditioning coaches working with our medical staff and our athletic trainers. It's our nutritionists. It's our coaches. It's the players, all understanding that this time less is more. We've had an extra day off every week in February. They've had 2 days off instead of 1. Some people think that means we're not working hard, which is the furthest thing that can be from the truth. But I do think having your game legs at game time is the most important thing we can do as a coaching staff.
Porter, go ahead.
Coach, you were talking about earlier how the players have evolved, and I want to talk about Michaela Daniels and how she's evolved this year. Last year kind of being a freshman scoring threat, and then this year having to kind of replace, Lex and IT. So talk about her growth this year and really being that floor general.
It started in the summer, when IT made the decision to transfer. I think Michaela knew that some of that load would fall on her shoulders with even with Slocum coming in. At that time, we had Alana Eaton in the mix. So it looked like Slocum and she were going to have some minutes at the point. And but then when Alana went down, I think that was the big shot that, hey, Mac, you've got to carry some of this scoring load too. And you're not the fourth option or the fourth of this. Don't let anybody convince you of that. You are an option. It just depends on how the defenders guard you. So she had to add this, shooting behind the screen. She's always been a scorer's mentality. She scored 47 points the sophomore year in her state finals game. So she had it in her. It just wasn't her natural personality around that group of seniors she had. So, and then when I told her, I said, Mac, you played more minutes. You are not a sophomore. You've played more minutes than most juniors in the country. So don't let anybody tell you that your academic standing equals your basketball experience. But if you've ever met Kenny and Wynetta, her mom and dad, you would understand that this kid was built for it. She's been raised into it, and it was just a matter of the opportunity lining up. And I talk about her every chance I get, but she still does not get the talk and the notice sometimes that I think she deserves. So thank you for asking about her.
All right, follow-ups for Coach. Jason, go ahead.
Coach, anything different you're going to do with your team, working out anything to get ready for the NCAA tournament this week? I know you're going to Greenville to win the tournament, but anything you try, work on now, especially with a week off coming up next week?
Yeah, we'll tweak a few things. We always save a few like wrinkles to our action because, again, film is out there for your first opponent. But, we strip more away than we add, Jason. And when you strip it away, that means you start to highlight the other stuff. So I do think we'll highlight some of those things. The week in between is so hard to manage because depending on how early you get knocked out in the SEC tournament, you could have up to almost 2 weeks off between your games. So I know what has worked with some of our teams in the past. I know this group is going to probably need some competition of some sort almost daily, whether it's on the court or playing cards or cornhole or whatever we can find. I think just keeping their competitiveness up will be a huge key because, again, getting to the tournament and being healthy is paramount and the most important thing that we can do because it would just – I would hate to have to not be able to play because we make a poor decision down the stretch on how we manage our time in that time off between SEC and NCAA.
Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, just a little bit on Amber. Are you surprised that she didn't get an all-SEC honor? And then got to talk a little bit about that Alabama game when, what did you see from her?
Well, I'll answer them in reverse order. The Alabama game, she took exactly what they were going to give us. I heard, in the pregame conversation that they were going to take the drives away from us and make us make some threes, which is, that's when Amber's eyes light up and she made her first one. And then from that point, she just kept scooting back. Had she not got tired, I think she probably would have made those last two as well because they were just a little bit short. It's really hard to get 3 players on the all-SEC team any year, much less this year. So she had an all-SEC caliber season. If you go back and you look at what numbers you normally have to be considered that, she will probably have exceeded most years. But in this year with the upperclassmen that we have, the depth of talent, the depth of great teams in this league, did anybody get 3 people on? I didn't think South Carolina or A&M got three players on the league. So it's more of a testament to what the other, players may have done statistically. And then a little bit of a product of just what a great year it is within our league. If you look around the league, there's a lot of kids that made all conference in other leagues that didn't have the year she had. But listen, that kid, she's about getting to San Antonio and playing well in San Antonio in front of her family and her friends. And she's driven by what her teammates think and her coaches think, and she knows exactly what we think about her.
Anyone else for Coach?
Hey, I just had a couple of little things, Mike. How long is practice now? Because you've said over and over that you tried to shorten it as you go. The longer you go, and how has that played into COVID and some of the other things that you've had to deal with?
We probably practiced a little bit longer this year than normal, but there was 50 minutes on today's practice schedule. Now it takes about an hour to execute it because you got rotations and you got a little bit of dead time. But by the time that they do all their stretching and all their warm-ups, I try to get it down to an hour by this time of the year, and this group's got it down to about 50 minutes. So that's about the right amount because, again, at this point in time, you don't have to go through as many reps. You don't have as many our rotation's kind of set. You don't have to go through as many teams to run things. So things happen a little bit quicker. But we had 50 minutes on the schedule today that was actual activity.
What's the difference in that than what was it when you started the season?
About an hour and a half, hour 50. I tell them at the beginning of the year, if you can, every week that you have a good week, I'll knock 5 minutes off. So if you start off having good weeks, you can get that thing down. Our team that went to the Final Four that year in 2016, we only practiced about 30 minutes a day the last 3 weeks of the season. So I think it does give them their legs, and I think it gets them motivated to have good practice leading up to it as well.